If you are into VFX, then you will love the guest on this podcast today. We have with us the Lord, the Wizard of VFX, Ian Hubert. How's it going, Ian?
Hey, how are you doing? It's going very good over here.
Yeah. You are in Seattle.
So
Mm-hmm.
sunset a couple hours ago.
Nice, lovely. Um, yeah, I assume most people that are watching this video clicked it because they know who you are, at least. But for those who don't, let's just say they were curious. Why don't you do a little introduction to who you are and yeah.
Been doing CG honestly since like the mid late 90s. I was using a piece of software that you can barely even find online, like reference to online, called Corel Motion 3D. And yeah, it was kind of just going hand in hand with supplementing the stuff I couldn't make out of like cardboard and all of that, because it was like stop motion and claymation, and everything just kind of kept evolving. But all of my visual effects stuff always came out of uh, wanting to make films cheaply.
Mm,
And
mm-hmm.
so like being able to build a set, or add a spaceship, or drive a car. We did like VFX for driving cars back before we could legally drive. And
Yeah.
now I'm like, oh, digital extras. We can fill in the background because wrangling people's schedules is almost impossible. Um, and so I have now I'm like, I'm a grown up. I actually have like a little bit of money, but still all of my skill sets are like, we can make this out of cardboard. And I'm kind of trying to figure out what to do with that.
And your YouTube channel, which I suppose a lot of people would know you for, um, the lazy tutorials and the insanely detailed sci-fi sets, which is Dynamo. Yeah. So what do you yeah, like? People have seen your stuff, I'm sure. But yeah, like what? Okay, what is Dynamo? What are you building exactly?
Actually, I think it's funny that like nobody watched anything I put out, because it's the internet. It's very vast, and so I'd work for years on something and put it out there, and people are like, okay. And since then, I did the lazy tutorials, which is kind of just the thought of like, okay, what if you took something that you knew really well and just condensed it down kind of into like a bite-sized thing? And I feel like if
60 second. Yeah.
everybody did that, like, and that's what YouTube's so cool about, is like, I'm like, I want to learn how to install an outlet, and you've got a guy who's been doing it for like 50 years, and like, all right, here's how you install an outlet. And I
Yeah.
I love that type of like condensed information. But
I
that
love
means
it. Yeah.
everybody's followed me since then has no idea that normally I'm actually kind of like a shit poster, and I make like weird films and stuff like that. I've been scared to upload them since then, because I'm
Now
like,
you've got
now
this huge
there's
channel. Yeah.
it's easy to upload anything when nobody's watching it. So I'm really excited to now release this new episode that I've been working on for like the past 3 years. But yeah, Dynamo is just kind of a passion project. It was a catch-all for all of the random things that I kind of wanted to try with film and all that. Like I'd see Star Trek, and I'd be like, I want to do spaceships. Or I'd see like zombies. I'm like, I need some zombies, and I just lump it all into this one world. I've got dozens of notebooks full of all of the stuff, and it's like way too much world building. Um,
Yeah, and
somebody
what
was
what impresses me the most is just how your knowledge within Blender and just VFX in general is like I'm always surprised that like you'll do like motion capture, rigging, animation, lighting, set design, texturing, and then you'll like project like textures and then build a building out of it. And it's like all of these like things that normally on a full set or production is done by like 20 different artists or teamed, but you're just a one man show almost, right?
I think it's just a byproduct of doing it for a long time, because the joke used to be that everything I did kind of hackishly. And like I talked to people who actually knew like what they were doing, and they're like, I can't believe anything you do actually like looks good at all, because that's like not a good way to do it. Um,
It's like duct tape and cardboard, and you're like, it works, like
oh
kind
yeah, like just duct
of.
tape a mesh onto a rig, and I'm like, look, it kind of looks alive a little bit. And so like, yeah, the translation, like putting out the tutorials, and people are like, oh, Ian really knows Blender, and I'm like, I guess at some point over the last 15 years, I did kind of learn Blender, but I think that's all it is. And also there's a puzzle aspect that's fun when there's a new tool that comes out. It's kind of like trying to decontextualize. Like there's the demo, but then there's also like, okay, what else could we do with this? Can we project footage on it? Can we do whatever? With geometry nodes that are now, all the whole thing.
Have you played with it yet?
Keep seeing, yeah, a little bit. I haven't reached the familiarity to be able to do anything with it, but I feel like that's
that's everyone right now. They're like, it's cool. I can move sliders and make things that I couldn't do before, but I don't really know what to do with it yet.
I feel like it's gonna change. Like it's gonna blow up once, like people do with like I know shader nodes. You mix the stuff and you can make it do cool things, and then Simon Toms makes a ladybug life cycle. Like you're like, what?
Yeah,
it's like,
out of vectors and math and it's like wow, I don't know how you do that.
Insane! I love it so much. It's so impressive.
Yeah. No, geometry nodes it's going to change everything. I think, like, I don't know if that's overstating it or understating it, but it feels huge. Like, especially when you know that it's just the start right now, and next there's like the ability to like fully procedurally model things, and then it's going to include the simulation system, and then it's going to include particles, and then collection nodes, so objects interacting with other objects, and it's just like, oh, this is cool. It's going to be Houdini within a few years.
I am very excited because right now it's like I love figuring out those, especially the procedural tools, like the random input.
Yeah.
For which, okay, so funny, I guess maybe funny story. I independently invented that like random into the color ramp to randomize the color thing.
Okay.
And I was so excited. I was like, oh, I came up with this. I'm so excited to like stick this in something. And so I don't know if you remember, it was like a joke lazy tutorial in response to, oh geez, who was it? Was it to CG Matter? It was a thing that ended with and then Andrew Price's like in the like a joke thing. But the thing that I thought was like actually useful in it was that randomization color thing. And then I found out that the person who tagged me had used that in their video, and then I saw that it was actually in your original donut video, and this is actually just like in a classic technique that I was like, I made this up. But yeah, I love
that's how it always is. It's like, I think I've invented something. It's like, aha, it's cool. And then people are like, yeah, you could have Googled that.
That's how you do it. But yeah, you can run into the limits of that so quick with just the way the Blender's infrastructure is set up right now. Like, all right, you can randomize. I just made a tool. It's kind of a proto car, and every time you duplicate it, it randomizes all the nodes and the different mix shaders and the shape keys and stuff, and so you get like a different car, kind of like a random face gen thing, because I wanted to populate the backs of scenes. And it worked okay, but it very much showed me kind of where the limits are of what Blender wants you to do. And I started getting into like drivers and stuff. Like, okay, I can use a driver to randomize this stuff, but then like Blender gets down to like half a frame per second. And like, I don't know why. It's because it's checking it can like, I can think of 2 million things a second, but if they're these things, it is hard for me.
That's right. Yeah, what Blender stalls on is surprising sometimes. It's like, you can handle all that, but there's one little object that is dense or whatever. It just crashes. Yeah. That's cool. I can't remember what we were talking about originally, but
everything nodes.
Yes. But I when you were talking about that, I was kind of curious because what is really impressive about what you do, and I often think this, like when you're showing one of your videos and it's like, here's this little janky thing and I project the thing and it's a building, and I always think like, that's so cool, but I know that if I try this on a project, I'm gonna run into a limitation, right? Like, I'm gonna need to show the building from another angle, and therefore that projection technique won't work, or like So all these, like, all your solutions are so cool and clever, and it's so efficient for what you need it for. But how do you know when to take that shortcut versus like doing it the proper way? You know what I mean?
Yes, yes, yes. And I think a lot of things that I do and that I enjoy doing only work on a small scale. Like that work if you're a hobbyist, whereas if I were on an actual production where they're like, we're making a video game, and I'm like, I made this building that looks really good from this angle, and they're like, cool. Well, we're walking around a little bit. But that's what I really enjoy. I like being able to do the path of least resistance. And I one thing I've really found over the past couple of years actually is I actually feel like I plateaued for a long time. I was kind of getting better along with technology, but like the past couple of years, I feel like I've stepped up a little bit. And I think a lot of that honestly is just because more people are following me. So when I upload something, I'm doing it with the mindset of like, I should actually polish. I should do that
Oh,
final 10% to make it actually like good. But
yeah,
with
yeah.
that came the realization, and I think that's actually a very useful tip. Is like if you want to make better art, make it with the assumption that a lot of people are going to see it. Like especially like the whole Twitter environment where like stuff can be shared. If somebody posts something cool
Yeah.
to Twitter, it like
Yeah, yeah.
it gets around.
Like that one
But
you had of the girl that was like on a turntable, or she was just turning her body, and there's a green screen, and it creates this full sci-fi world from this little janky home setup almost against a green screen. How many views did that get? Millions, right?
like I 50 plus million, yeah. And I
Yeah.
actually okay, so I made that. I worked specifically hard on it because I thought it could be a really cool demonstration of what you could do in your garage with like 30 bucks of green fabric and like a camera. Like I
Yeah.
specifically made it as kind of a showcase for like, look, this is Blender. You can motion track, you can key, you can do all of this in open source software. For me, it was very, very much this like exciting. It was supposed to be like a thing of like, look, we could, you can do stuff. This is very cheap. I have a $50 light kit, lighting the thing.
Uh-huh.
But seeing it, like having it go viral, I like that was weird because again, it had nothing to do with me. It was just shared over and over and over. It was on the front page of Reddit like 3 or 4 times. Um,
Whoa.
and
Yeah.
every single time people are just responding to the fact that she's in like a green void. And they're like, this is so depressing. And they're like, this is why Ian McKellen, this stupid quote about Ian McKellen crying on the set of The Hobbit, shared it was always the top comment. And like, this is why Ian McKellen cried. It's like Ian McKellen cried
Oh,
because he was trying to
really?
have an emotional connection with like a tennis ball, like for days and days on end on like an absolutely problem, like
Ian
for by all
McKellen
accounts.
was a Gandalf in Lord of the Rings, and the
Yeah.
Hobbit. I don't actually know the story, so hang on. He cried on the Hobbit. Why is that?
There's an anecdote where he was like first the Hobbit production was like very stressful.
Oh yeah, I
And
saw a
there's a thing
little
where he
video
kept having to
about
talk
that.
to these like tennis balls and having to pretend they were hobbits, and apparently he cried and he's like, this isn't why I got into like acting. um and I think later he
Wow.
kind of walked it back a bit, but like that's the anecdote that people love for like why actors hate uh CG. And I have a bunch of thoughts
It's got
on
to be
like
hard. It's got to be hard. Yeah.
to a degree.
Yeah.
Yeah, like if you're what actors want to do is they want to feel as if they are creating a moment for real. Like
Mm.
they're trying to they're trying to build that inside of them, and they want to make that for the audience. And so when they get something back, that's when they're talking to somebody and things just click, and suddenly it isn't just like this fake thing they're doing. It's suddenly like you get this synergy and it actually feels as if you're there in the moment. And so
Okay.
if you're just acting off of ping pong balls, you're never going to be able to get any of that. But to say like an actor can't be on a green screen stage, like stage actors will be black box theaters. Their imagination is totally
Yeah.
normal
Yeah. True.
for an actor.
That's true.
Um, but the thing they don't want to fake is that interaction.
Mm.
And I found that on my end too. Like I'm always, it's hard for me to schedule actors because we're all adults now, and so I always schedule like. But phone calls are easy because you just get either film them on different days, or like I film one actor and then I have it be like a video phone, and I can literally just do like a web call with them and screen capture it, and be like, there we go.
Oh, yeah,
I
yeah,
filmed the
yeah.
scene. But the actors do not like that because again, they're acting to the air and they have to be both sides, and there's no way to get that synergy.
Mm.
Everybody watching that clip was like, oh, her acting is like amazing. And both Caitlin and I, like, Caitlin is a good actress, but for that scene, literally all she's doing is walking across the stage, standing in a place, waiting, and that worked perfectly for the scene because
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
what you
yeah.
would be doing in real. That is like actually what you'd be doing. You'd be doing the steps to get to the place and all of that.
Yeah,
And so yeah,
yeah.
that was interesting. Just seeing these same comments like literally thousands of times. I mean, I just stopped looking,
Really?
but first
Well,
time
that's
you're on Reddit,
Reddit.
I'm
I
like,
mean,
oh, look
Reddit.
at this.
Yeah, yeah. They just
Um,
they beating a dead horse is putting it lightly on Reddit. There's very
or like
few original ideas floating around.
it was weird seeing like accounts I follow just start reposting it, like creator unknown. Like it's like, oh, look at it was me. Oh, it's not.
Right. But yeah,
But
speaking of yeah, like actors being able to act better. Uh yeah, what about LED volumes? That I actually just watched a little like a making of thing for The Mandalorian 2. And ILM have gone all in on LED volumes. They've actually launched like their own product called Stagecraft 2.0. It's like an end-to-end solution, which is the LED volume, the whole the kit. I don't know what it is. And they also launched their own real-time engine, Helios, it's called, because I guess apparently
really,
Unreal Engine was not good enough. But this one is built from the ground up just for virtual production.
really,
Yeah, yeah.
I did not
So,
know
I
that.
mean, if you needed any more proof that like green screen, sorry, that LED volumes are the new green screen, like ILM is just sold on it. It's huge.
That's cool.
Oh, and
Um,
explain what an LED volume is, by the way, for those who don't know what we're talking about.
LED volume, if you were in a room and every just surface of the inside of the room were a screen, you could make that room be whatever. And normally, like that illusion is broken if like you start moving around, you can see like the parallax shifts, but they're tracking the camera location, and so they're actually just showing on the screen that moving perspective, calculated and like retriangulated, so it just all looks right like on
Mm.
the screen.
And the
And
reason it's so much more groundbreaking over green screens is that the reflections and the lighting is real. So the Mandalorian, who's entirely shiny, is actually reflecting the real environment because it's like wrapped around him. So they don't have to, if it was a green screen, it would be horrible. You wouldn't get the real reflections. Oh, it's crazy. It's so cool.
I hate green screen because it's an abomination. You're trying to capture an image and then you just have this big green slab in the middle. And so like all of the indirect lighting and little things that like make the world feel tangible and make places feel real. You have to recreate that, but I mean you can't get it on set. You have to maybe stick. I don't know. One of my favorite things to do on a green screen is set up practical lights that you can match in CG so everything like ties together. But even like the
Mm.
cinematography, like even accomplished, experienced DPs, when they go to shoot a green screen scene, they kind of resort to like, all right, I'm shooting an element, and they back up and they let the person walk around like they're on like a high school theater stage or something, because there's no background. You can't
Yeah.
create a composition if it's just a person in front of green. And so yeah, being able to have that actual lighting from the location, being able to tweak the lighting like in real time, and being able to like see the background so you can discover new shots. Like every time on set, it's always a happy accident of but over here this looks good, and you can't have any happy accidents when you're in like just a green void. It's just
Mm.
different angles of a person. So
Yeah.
that part is very cool, and it finally brings all of that other aspect of cinematography kind of back into the story, which is exciting. What I don't like about it is for like 20 years now, we could do at home basically everything they were doing in Hollywood. Like maybe
Hmm.
not the wire work and stuff, but we had cameras, we could key stuff, we could track stuff, we could do all of that. And now it's like the big boys are off doing their own thing again. And
Yeah, that's right. With $500,000 LED volume setups. Yeah, yeah.
so it's one of those things like that is cool technology. If I had millions of dollars, yeah, I'd build my own cyber room too.
Yeah,
Have fun.
exactly.
Like I guess I'm just kind of like I'm a little jealous. There's we just rewatched. Well, I rewatched. Caitlin never seen the Lord of the Rings movies before, and those things are absolutely gorgeous. Like all of the love and the handcrafted everything. But there's a texture. There's a texture to all of the films, and but what I loved is that you can still kind of see how it fits together. Like you can see a little bit the depth of field is maybe a little bit too shallow when it's a miniature, but they're still motion tracking in all of these little, CG goblins where maybe the walk cycle is like, and because of that, you can appreciate it kind of all the more. And like at the time, it was like absolutely, it still holds up because it's the artistic vision behind it and the artistry that went into it is still absolutely top notch. But you can see the different methods they use, even between like the second and the third film. Gollum went from like kind of honestly kind of awkwardly animated. He's slipping and sliding, kind of going pose to pose. And by the third one, the next year, he is the animation and like even the rendering is just like he's just a character there in the scene. But I kind of miss that. I miss the 80s and the 90s and stuff where there was always a trick to it where it's always like, oh, we set up a mirror here, and then like he raises his hand, and it's like an inflatable bladder or whatever. And I feel like the fact that CG is just like such an obvious catch-all for everything now.
But it's I guess that would be it's good for us because we know CG. Like, I'm thinking specifically of you, like being able to do that stuff gives you such an advantage over the next generation of filmmakers who know purely filmmaking, and they have to have a friend that hopefully knows 3D, or they have to pay someone. I don't know. Like I see it as it's a plus for us, right?
That's true. I think I want all indie filmmakers now, or at least all applicable ones, to have an understanding of motion tracking, and I guess some sort of like if people understood that you can track the camera and just stick a thing back there, I feel like that would change so many things. I mean, and people know that, but like I wish, I don't know, like I did a tutorial series last year, literally just because like it's information I wanted out there of like, look, you can key a thing, you can track a thing, this is how you can do a digital extension. If you can just build a tiny corner of a set, and so you can film everything normal, film your whole conversation, but then take 20 steps back and digitally fill in like the rest of it, and just know on the set, like, or like as you're shooting, that like that's just going to be a thing you can do, no problem. I think that literally does liberate you in terms of like being able to tell a bunch of things you normally wouldn't.
That was that one you did of the sci-fi, of course it's sci-fi, the girl in the room, and then you sort of step out and it's like outside the building and you're looking through the windows. Was it that one?
Yeah, that one was motion tracking, but then I was like, here, let's project that onto a thing and stick a window kind of in front of it. Which that was the actual point of the tutorial, was just trying to put that idea out there of like, look, you can use half a room and have the other half of the room, whatever's in the foreground, you don't need a green screen or anything. You can just stick CG stuff there and recontextualize the space that you're in, which means you don't have to do any of the keying pipeline. You just need a back wall that works like from an art standpoint.
And I have to keep reminding myself that these images that you've got or whatever, they're not just demos for tutorial, which look beautiful, but they're for something. Dynamo. So what is Dynamo?
Dynamo is it's the passion project I've been working on since forever. I'm always working on it. I work on it hours every day for the past decade.
Decade.
Oh yeah. Even when I was working on Tears of Steel, I would go home and I'd keep working on Dynamo. And what's wild to me is that in the past like 6-7 years, I've released 15 minutes of stuff. Like that's what all of the years have gone into. And it's not even like that great of like a 15 minutes. Because first I made like 2 hours worth of stuff, and I just kept filming. I was like, oh, this scene, you can always recontextualize stuff. You can take a lackluster scene, but then recontextualize it to show like, but he has like a gun in his pants the whole time. And suddenly that lackluster scene, you're like, oh, is his pants gun gonna explode? So I kept doing that. but I was doing it all in parallel, which means I never had anything finished to like upload. And eventually I was
Uh,
just sitting on a massive pile of stuff, most of which was like 5 years old. And so I decided, okay, well, I don't want to do all of the post work. It would take years worth of post to get this all ready to upload. And now a lot of it's old and we just kind of filmed it in like random crawl spaces and things. And it kind of looks it. Let's throw that out. Let's kind of start over. And so I spent a couple years starting in like 2015 remaking kind of a parallel show that would fit in with all of that, but like using stuff I'm interested in now, technology available now, and like friends that still live in town as opposed to like whoever happened to be my housemate back in 2010 or whatever. But then, so we made like 45 minutes of that, but then I decided I wanted to open it with a really solid episode. So for the past 3 years, I've just let myself go absolutely nuts, making this opening episode. Like every shot is a completely new CG scene. Like it's just shot after shot after shot. I'm very proud of it. It's definitely a lot of work. Like it's very evidently a lot of work when you watch it. You go, okay,
yeah.
that doesn't necessarily translate into being good, but
It sounds like
I'm
the
excited.
making of the film might be a film in and of itself. I mean, it sounds like almost like I'm getting like remnants of like The Lighthouse, of like somebody obsessed over something to the detriment of the rest of their life, and it's just the only thing they know.
It's yeah. There was oh geez. When I had the sound team on the hook, I told the sound team, "Hey, okay, I think I'm just about ready to send this to you." And they're like, "All right, we're ready." And I was like, "Cool. All right, I think it's just one more day of pushing through on this." And so I kind of put myself in this self-imposed crunch, and I just kept doing that day after day, updating thing after thing after thing for like 3.5 months, from like
Oh,
December through like sometime like a month ago. I was just grinding, and it was a Seattle winter with the dark and the rain and the quarantine and all of that. And so my mental health just plummeted, but I was just
oh.
fixated on like the sunk cost fallacy or whatever. Like, well, I just have to finish this episode so I can release it, and then everybody can see what all my like my suffering was
So
for. It
what
was
were you
very
fixing
unhealthy
during
pattern.
that 3 months? What was worth it?
I mean, well, first, who knows if it was, but so the process of filming is very. The script is like a page. I had like a minute of scripted stuff, and
Okay.
the final episode is like 20 minutes long, and that's because I just didn't put any limits on
Whoa.
myself in like what I kept adding. So I kept being like, well, it'd be better if I kind of had an establishing shot here or made a cutaway B-roll thing that's, full digital or whatever. And I just kept doing that. And um, with no breaks at all. And I don't think it was a bad thing. I think it's kind of in terms of like paying your dues, like it could like I'm glad I put all that work into this thing, and now I have this thing to show, even if it like the process of doing it wasn't the most healthy. My fear for a long time was that it would just look very self indulgent and just kind of be like a CG reel, and it's like, okay, wow, okay, you'll get a job somewhere. Um,
Right.
but the end result actually is it feels kind of like just a passive experience, like a little bit like it's about this girl, and she isn't like a superhero or anything. She's just kind of like living life, and you're just kind of like exploring this kind of day in her life in a way which is very much media that
Mm.
I like. I wanted kind of
Okay. Okay.
the anti we have to save the world thing, and more just like even tiny victories for everyone, is important to them if you take the time to kind of get on their level. Um,
So just like pure world building, just kind of like, oh, that's
yeah,
cool.
there's a lot of random ass world building in this one.
Well, I mean, it if it's as beautiful as the shots that you've shown, I mean, I'm down for that. That sounds pretty cool.
I'm very excited to put it out.
When can
Yeah,
we
we'll
expect
see.
it? And can
Well,
and can we
I
get a
sent you a
hard and
link.
fast date?
Yes, yes. So I have a very talented friend who's drawing up a poster for it. And I asked the sound team yesterday, hey, do you have any idea? Can I put a release date on there? And they said, end of April for is our goal. Mid-May for sure. And so I'm like, that's exciting.
Ooh, so what day did you put on the poster?
Well, haven't finished the poster yet.
Ah, I
But
see, I
it's
see.
looking cool.
That's great. Okay, all right. Well, the internet community will hold you accountable for that. I don't know.
I hope I hope so.
Just
Hope
wait,
somebody
like
does.
May 16th when it's they'll just be like, where is it, Ian?
The thing is, like, even with everything lined up to like, there's no reason I couldn't have it released then. I'm still like, I've thought that so many times. For years, I've thought I'm just like 3 weeks out from having it done. And so
Oh
I'm like,
yeah.
oh, who knows?
Yeah. Well,
Um,
the first oh gosh, what was it? One of the early interviews I did with Colin Levy was when he was making Skywatch, and in it, I think it was recorded in like start of or like middle 2017, and I asked him like, so when can we expect Skywatch? And he was like, yeah, like by the end of the year, and we actually like released it. I don't know, the interview like a year later, it still wasn't out. And so we're like, well, we could have just say it's like the end of the year, like it could be the end of that year. But then it was like another like year and a bit after that. So yeah, yeah, it's it seems to be like a known problem. That what is it? Yeah, your expectation of how long things are going to take, especially when you're doing something that you haven't done yet, like knowing all the steps that it takes, the editing, the final color grading, and like the revisions it takes of all those little things. You go like, oh, it actually, yeah, months and months add on.
Colin is amazing. Like his level of quality, his quality control is absolutely amazing. He's also like basically the only person in the world that, I guess that's weird to say, but when I meet people, I don't normally think like, oh yeah, you're kind of like me, like your brain, you have the same kind of drives, the same overlaps. But like he's done Blender for a lot. He mostly is like obsessed with writing, but like also is dove into learning all of like the other technical stuff. He's like hard on himself. He's I don't know. He overthinks emails. All like me. To the degree where I'm like, Colin is kind of on that same
Yeah.
existence type
You and him, and
through
you
the world.
both directed. I mean, we didn't even mention that, but Tears of Steel, you directed. Colin also directed Sintel, and the what was that other one called? Oh, that recent one that was really good, Agent 327.
Oh
Sorry,
yes, yes.
that was brilliant. But anyways, you directed Tears of Steel. So what year was that?
2012.
Yeah, and that was the one for the folks who don't know. Famous. There was the shot on the canal with the girl who was talking to. Oh, she had a robot hand, and she's talking to a
Yeah.
boyfriend, I guess. And so it was kind of like a breakup story or some spoilers. Uh, yeah,
Yeah.
it was cool. That was really cool.
That was the funnest. That was definitely like the funnest year of my life. Just like living with all those talented people and like going and working on stuff and learning so much all the time. Because it's just like the best minds are just everywhere walking around in that building.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd be like doing something like you can just hit that one button and it does all of that. I'm like, that's amazing.
Yeah,
Um,
that's true.
and like working with Ton is
An
I
enigma.
know we know that like he's the guy, but I feel like he still doesn't even get like enough credit for like I've used a lot of software, but very little of it has like Ton's effectively like Blender's conscience at this point. Like I feel like his big role in the at the Blender Institute, and I don't know what I know he's been trying to take a step back for a few years and his health scare. Thank God he's all right.
Yeah.
Kind of accelerated that, but so I don't know how he's active, but mostly it's just in making sure that like, gosh darn it, no, Blender's going to stay open source. All of those things,
Yeah. Yeah.
that
Yeah.
we've
Yeah.
said for the past 20 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's so cool. Yeah, we
Yeah.
had a lot of differences of opinion on Tears of Steel, but like when it
Yeah.
comes to Ton's sense of morality or
Mhm.
whatever, I almost trust his more than mine. It's true.
Wow. Yeah. And his story was about like, oh god, like he used to like early days was like really big into the investment like startup world. So Blender was funded, got $20 million in funding or something, and first class business flights to meetings and blah blah blah. And then it just like the .com bubble just crashed it, and then it was like,
Really?
well, let's we've got this Blender project over the side, which is worthless and you can't do anything with it. So then he crowdfunded the money to save Blender and basically make it open source. So they raised like $30,000 or something like that. Like a very early crowdfunding project. This was back in, I don't know, 90 something, 97 maybe. Anyway, it was in the interview I
Something
did
like
with
that,
Tom.
yeah.
But yeah, and then they like just made it open source. They bought it off the company and then released it open source. Crazy. Yeah, I didn't expect that because yeah, he was the full like corporate capitalist route, and then that crashed and failed, and then he's like, no, socialism. I don't know whatever he said. Anyways, that's sort of getting off the track there. I'm curious with your your journey and wealth of knowledge, filmmaking. A lot of young people out there today with the new iPads or whatever you can edit films on, and all the tutorials and technologies available today. Never been a better time to be a filmmaker. What advice would you have for a young 16, 17-year-old who wants to be a filmmaker?
That, oh man, I get so old man so quick. The first question I guess I'd have is, what does filmmaking mean to a 16-year-old these days? We've reached so much saturation. Like our TikTok videos, those are definitely filmmaking. But then there's also like the Marvel movies, $10 bazillion. That's also filmmaking. But I feel like those are completely disparate
different. Yeah.
goals. And
Oh yeah. Let's cut out the TikTok stars. But yeah, I know what you mean. Let's say filmmaking, as in they want to follow kind of what you and Colin have done, right? Like made a short film or a series, or they want to be able to just tell stories, make movies, shows, whatever it might be.
well, and that's where I'm wondering, like, is that how have those mediums changed? I mean, I'm just like, over the course of my lifetime, it used to be if you wanted to do movies, you had to move to LA. That's where all the infrastructure was. And then we got home video cameras. We could do all the CG from home, and you could just rent, like with the Red camera, you could shoot stuff that like maybe it was filmed. Nobody knew. No, apparently people could tell. But seeing that revolution happening, and then like iPhones, like you can shoot stuff. That whole thing is very, very exciting. And what's weird to me, I don't know, maybe it's just where the way the algorithms sort or whatever. I feel like there was a period like 9 years ago, and maybe it was just because I was in my early 20s, but everybody was had their own web series. Everybody's working on their own short film or whatever. There was a period where like I had like 10 different friends all working on their own webs. I don't have a single friend. I haven't heard of anybody trying to do a web series in years. I'm the only one. That's not true. There's a few people who've like released like little CG shorts or whatever.
Yeah.
But again, it's always oriented around the social media thing. It's like it's a minute long, so you can see it on TikTok and Twitter and Instagram and all of that stuff. And so it fits into the sitting on the toilet time frame.
Yeah, that's right. Whereas you've got 45 minutes of footage. That's a long
and that's what's depressing too, is like knowing someone's scrolling through Facebook and they're just trying to find stuff to make them angry, and then just in the middle of that there's my video and they're like, here, let's click on that, and I don't even mind that they're watching like something I spent 3 years of my life on like a little screen. Like, that's honestly, it'll condense it down. It just looks more dense. That's fine. But like nobody's gonna watch a 20-minute video like that.
Yeah.
Which is where I'm glad.
We're impressed they're watching this. Actually, they're up to 40-minute mark. They're doing well.
We're at 40 minutes. Whoa,
time flies.
That's wild.
Sorry to cut you off. Go
no,
ahead.
I'm babbling about all this stuff. Digital internet distribution and stuff. Before Netflix,
how do you hope Dynamo to be consumed? Is it going to be a web series, like episodic, or released on a streaming platform? Do you see that? I want
to do it. I just want to stick it up on YouTube, I guess. Like that seems the most. I don't know, the way everything has its own streaming platform right now is like I'm kind of just Like, I get it. That's what you can do now. You can get money by having people give you. I pay
Yeah.
so many things like $5 a month these
Yeah, we all
days.
do. Yeah.
So I'm just like, just stick it on YouTube. You could go watch it on YouTube. Um,
Yeah. No, I mean it's the YouTube route is the what do you call it? It's like the marketing route, the free route. It's
mhm.
available to everyone. And
Yeah.
so in order to make money, you have to have another revenue avenue of which to make. I mean, in my case, it's Polygon. You get free
Mhm.
tutorials, but you have this business that generates money. So the tutorials on Blender Guru will always be free because it hits the widest market, and therefore it benefits both of us. In your case, you've got your wonderful Patreon, which pays some bills. Um, but yeah, anyway, I can't remember where we're going. But so YouTube, that's gonna be cool. So just upload the whole series to YouTube. That's great.
Well, and then that's where I'm like, oh, wouldn't it be great if there were a series? Because I already know, like, I can see the madness looking at me in the face. Like, you just spent 3 years making an episode. Like, is that just why do you believe it would ever be different? And then before that, you released, a 15-minute episode a few years ago for the first time in like half a decade. Like, unless if I change something, that's never gonna be different. I'm just gonna keep working on a bunch of stuff and then be like, this isn't very good. Um, and start over. And so what I'm really, really trying to work on now is like, all right, how can I kind of front load all that effort that normally is in, the years of post, and
Mm.
so that I can just get as much in camera. I still have all the digital extension tricks and stuff I can do, because what I want to do, I have this special nirvana of like, you photo scan all the sets, you photo scan the actors. I have like a Rococo mocap suit. Um, I've got a good graphics card. It Everything can render fast. Like, I just want to bring that, mesh it together, all the live action stuff and the digital stuff. You can copy and paste real life. If you want to do a digital extension, you can just take the practical set and like whip it around and track the camera, and just make all of that so it isn't a giant project. And I think
Hmm.
right now every shot has to go through a pipeline. You got to import it, track it, roto it, do
Yeah.
whatever, do all of that. Actually, what's weird is but if you can do it real time, you can have actual live camera tracking and all of that, and like you get rid of all of those steps and you just end up with footage. What's weird is that 2-minute shot of her on the elevator was I had that whole thing set up in like half an hour. I just tracked it. It's all just one camera move, and so just tracked it, keyed it, did a garbage mat around her, stuck it back in the scene, lined up some geometry with the tracking markers,
Uh-huh.
and it was like half an hour for 2 minutes. Um,
Huh.
which means, whereas if I don't know, that was just the thing I wanted to keep in mind of like, it's the setup that takes all the time. It doesn't actually has nothing to do with the length of the shot. It's getting everything all lined
Oh,
up.
I
And so
see
I'm
what you
trying to
mean.
keep that in mind. Do those big long shots. They're kind of impressive, but they also let people get immersed in the scene. They let the thing breathe, and
Yeah,
they kind
are
of
you attracted to like the visuals, or is it like the storytelling that you're passionate about?
um I love the storytelling. I think I'm like embarrassed to say a lot of times the thing I am most excited about is the environment. I feel like that's
Mm.
not a very good storyteller thing to do, but I feel like films don't necessarily just have to be a medium for cramming as much plot in your face as much as possible. Like, so many movies that are coming out these days, it's like all the characters can do is react to stuff, and there's no anticipation, there's no build up, there's no anything, because it's just like, and now this thing, and now we have to run over here, and that
Oh
exploded.
yeah. Did you watch
Um,
Tenet?
I did not see Tenet. No.
Okay, that's that to like the 10th degree. Like, yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. It's everything's happening at once. And I eventually you just sit back and go, well, I have no idea what's going on. I'm just gonna watch some pictures and just like
Oh,
it
that's a bummer.
it
I thought
is. It
Nolan used to
was.
have a
Oh, the
better
rest of
sense
Nolan's
in that.
films are fantastic. This one felt like it was a little too ambitious. Time travel
Yeah.
movie, in my opinion. I don't know.
But what I think, like, even more than story, what people are reacting to is like the experience of watching the film. Um, it's the reason most people's like comfort films or the films they watch over and over are slightly more passive films that they can just kind of exist in. Films showing people's lives are like slowly growing up or whatever. Or like all of the Miyazakis, where so much of it is based around the minutia of living.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, yeah, Miyazaki, is that the like the Spirited Away guy, right?
Yeah,
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 yeah. Those
and it's
films are, yeah, just so beautiful to watch. Because yeah, like I was thinking about, I'm like, you know, yeah, a movie has to have something to like a story. If you have to care about the characters, or you're not going to keep watching. And yet, when I think about like those films, Spirited Away and everything, like I almost didn't. I mean, Spirited Away, you do actually care, but some of the other ones, you're just in it to watch the pretty pictures, and it's still a pleasant experience. So it can sometimes be just pretty pictures, I guess.
well, I love the stories for I think Miyazaki's like absolutely wild.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, there are some films where I'll just have them on because it's like, yeah, this is just kind of nice. So I'm hoping it kind of fits into that domain a little bit. There's still stuff happening. There's a lot of exposition happening, ideally without even people particularly noticing, but you're still absorbing that information, and so you feel as if things are kind of moving and progressing. It just isn't
Right.
like somebody standing there being like, "Hey, here's all of this stuff that you should know."
Yeah, yeah,
So I feel
yeah.
like it's just kind of a ideally kind of subtly folding that narrative just into the world. Um,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Got it. I've
so we'll see.
Uh, another question I was curious. I mean, very similar to the previous one about like sort of beginner filmmakers, but I'm very curious around like learning curriculums and yeah. Let's just say you had a young person today who was wanted to get into filmmaking, VFX, etc. What sort of learning curriculum would they give them if they wanted to like become employable after like a year? Like what sort of things could they experiment or teach themselves or projects to engage in?
Employable doing like VFX stuff.
VFX, yeah, yeah.
I mean, there's definitely there's the areas where people are always looking to hire, like market or product marketing and stuff. If you can render a nice cell phone, I feel like there's always
Mm-hmm.
gigs out there.
Isn't that more
Not
like
particularly
product viz category?
Yeah.
I was thinking more like
Ah.
VFX, like making like TV shows or movies, let's say.
Oh, gotcha. I'm trying to think. So I just did freelance for like 15 years basically, and let's see. Yeah, being a generalist definitely helped, which just means you familiarize yourself a little bit with like motion tracking and keying and rendering if you're doing the full 3D side of things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I guess I I don't know. I want to say like learn all of it, just do all of it. But I guess what if you only have a year just trying to specialize in something, if you are the motion tracking person, I would think that would see the difficulty though is if you are the motion tracking person, how do people know that you're the motion tracking person? Um, like how would people like, oh, we really need motion tracking. We got to go to this person. And to do that, you'd have to like just focus on making some really cool demos, I guess. There has
Mm-hmm.
to be something to make people think of you when they need motion tracking.
Sure,
Um,
like just like a hot demo reel. Yeah, of just like motion
yeah.
track shots, and you call yourself, you put your name dash motion tracker. You send that in as as a demo reel. That could work.
And so, and honestly, throwing stuff on Instagram. If you put cool demo things on Insta, people will absolutely find you. Um,
Mm.
Probably don't want to work for most of them. Seriously, you probably don't. But sometimes you
They're
just got
gonna
to
get
pay
some
your.
really odd requests.
Oh yeah, nobody. I mean, that's a whole other giant conversation. But like, nobody knows how much work anything is, and so they're like, "Hey, I saved up $100. Can you make me an animation like this one you did?" I'm like, "That was 6 months of my life," and they're like, "Yeah, yeah. So can you do it?" I'm like, "No."
No, no, it's going to cost
But I
more than
mean, it's
$100 is what I'm saying.
like it's a black box, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, and usually it's it's very. I always like the joke that goes around of like the person on who's paying you $100 is like, what am I gonna get for this? Da da da. And it's like a billion emails, and the person who's paying you like $50,000, like, hey, here's the money.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's true. Oftentimes, yeah,
Yeah.
working corporate gigs is a lot of times very boring, but they know how to pay and they know how to keep things on a
Yeah.
schedule, and they know how to tell you sometimes what they want from the get go. Um,
Yeah.
Honestly, being one of the biggest things I have to do, being a visual effects like person doing client work, is interpret what, like, a lot of times they'll look at something and they'll be like, that doesn't look real, and it's like, yeah, no, obviously it doesn't look real, but do you know why it doesn't look real? And you have to be able to be the person who can like look at it and see, like, is it the black level? Is black level just a shorthand for like the color space is actually super wonky? Which for me, that is always what it is, color space. Um, and so yeah, developing that eye, but that kind of gets into like composition and all of that. Like, how can you teach it? Is it because people have been looking at pictures their entire lives, and either they've
Yeah.
started this mental inventory of like, or the sense of like what works, or they haven't. And if they're like 25 or whatever and they haven't already don't already have a sense of, I have no idea. I'm sure you could. I guess there's just a part of me that thinks if that were a part of them they were passionate about, they probably would have already been learning it. I'm babbling now. I think that
Right, right. Yeah. Hmm. And, and you talking about some of your VFX experiences. I didn't realize this until we started messaging on Twitter, but you also did the VFX for, was it that's the sci-fi film? Was it Prospect?
Prospect, yeah, that film
Yeah.
was awesome.
I
Oh,
loved that film.
oh,
That
you
was,
saw it.
oh, it was beautiful. The story was just, it was great. It's exactly what I thought yeah, kind of like it was low budget, right? Like not, it
Oh yeah.
wasn't, yeah. Like it was exactly what you'd hope a low budget sci-fi film would be. Like limited characters, limited sets or varieties of sets, and just kind of like, but story focused, really good acting, really good story. What did you do on that?
I did the VFX for that, which included mostly like 2,000 shots of dust floating through the air. It's on an alien planet, and they always have to wear these helmets the whole time. And actually, it has Pedro Pascal. I don't know where the emphasis
Okay.
is on his last name, but he's the guy who plays the Mandalorian, and so that's like two shows in a row
Oh,
where
is
he
that
never
right?
takes his helmet off. Yeah.
Really? Oh, that's
Um,
crazy.
this was right before that. In fact, he went from shooting Prospect straight over to, I think, Mandalorian. He's been in a
Is
bunch of stuff. He's
he is
exploded.
the Mandalorian? He's the cat.
Yeah,
The
he is the Mandalorian.
Oh
Yeah,
wow. Okay, I haven't seen the show yet. I gotta watch it. But yeah.
he was
Anyway,
in. I
sorry.
think.
So the VFX. So you were one person on that production.
Yeah, I had. It's one of those things where it's like I was close enough that I could almost say, it was 100% me. But I did have a bit of help from my friend Nate, and Caitlin actually did. So she helped me with some tracking. Um,
Right. And I think was there also a team of 3D artists or people doing the 3D?
no, I.
No.
Oh, I'm gonna be so embarrassed if there was. I think it was all me. I
Well,
think.
because I remember I actually said it in a old podcast or something like that, and then people were like, "No, Andrew, you got it wrong. You missed out all the other 3D artists that worked on it or something." And I was like, "Oh, I don't know. Maybe Ian just did the
You know what?
VFX for it."
No, you're right. So the ending, there's it was actually it was a very wonderful gig. There was a little bit of a nightmare towards the end just because I was one person and they were working with a post house, and the post house had like everything to the frame had to be exact in every deliverable, and I was delivering 2,000 dust shots and all the other VFX shots. Originally, when I got the footage, it was 1 pixel too short, like the export they sent me.
Mm,
So I matched everything in that. So we had to re-export all of that. Then it turns out they sent me in the
what?
wrong color space. So I had to tweak the black level for every asset. Then it turns out there were some dead pixels in some of the assets I got, so I had to hand paint out,
Oh
redeliver
my
all of those.
God.
All well, like getting all of the file names absolutely like perfect, and I kept like just missing like to export one of these files, I had to check and set up all of these different preferences and things like that. And just like one thing every once in a while would be off when I'm delivering like
Oh no.
20, 30 shots every, day. I was
Oh
making
my
mistakes all
God.
over the place. And that's just where normally if you're a company, VFX company, you have a person to handle that. But like I'm the person getting the notes, trying to implement them. And I stretched myself too thin. And so the ending of it was a little bit intense. And so at the very end, yeah, there was another VFX house. Again, I was so far underwater, I can't even tell you who they were. They added, by which I'm very sorry. They're in the credits, but they added little twinkling lights and broken glass
Oh,
and stuff,
okay.
different
Okay.
stuff that I didn't take on. Geez, I
Dude,
can't
that
believe
sounds like
I
a
completely.
nightmare of an ending. You
It
handling all
was
that. That's insane.
everybody was really. I really don't like letting people down, and I was feeling as if I was very much letting people down. Um, but fortunately, like the people I was working with, they were like, "Hey, you know what? Actually, we're just gonna swing by your house, and just like we'll have a drive. We just copy it over onto the drive. We'll just check everything. We'll just kind of be methodical about it, and we'll ship it off." And they did that, and I was like, "That's so." Like they were having to kind of baby me a little bit, just because like I didn't know where else to draw resources from, and
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
like I was working all day every day, and you just start to kind of make mistakes when you're dealing with that many moving pieces. I have a brain. I very much like to have a thing, and I hyper focus on it. And I'm like, all right, this is going to be my life for a minute. And as soon as like I'm like, all right, here's like 20 things. It's like it's an oil slick. Um,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, dude, that's
but
crazy. Well,
I
that's
actually so
oh, sorry, go ahead.
oh, I just wanted to tell you, like they they live in Seattle. The guys who made that, where rent is like insane, so they didn't have any extra rooms to store their stuff. So I actually have a room in the church just full of like all of the props from the movie. Like
Is
this is
that
the
right?
key. This is like a cast pewter
Whoa.
like ignition key. I got
That's
all of it. In fact,
crazy.
I photo scan. I put them on like photo scanned them. Like have little characters in Dynamo or just like random
Oh, that's
using
so
random
cool.
props. Um,
Oh, that's awesome,
just
man.
very cool. Those guys are great. And they spent the low budget in the best possible way. They just rented like a warehouse for 6 months and filled it with like artists who were just spending all day every day inventing their own fonts and
Oh,
data.
really?
Oh yeah, they designed all their sets in CAD and then they used a laser cutter just to like cut it out. So they put it together like a puzzle. And so like the way if I build a set, I'm like, I'm in a room, I'll put up some walls, here's a table, we'll make it like a computer thing. But if you
Mm-hmm.
go into like any any actual like spaceship or submarine or whatever, everything's mounted to the ceiling and all of that, and it's like the shape of the hole is defining the
Mm.
shape of the room. So they were actually able to get all of that in their designs. Like in their spaceship, you're lying basically flat, and all the controls are up above you.
Oh, right.
And it was so cool. And being we had all these meetings where we'd actually work through the physics of how everything would work. The space station spinning, and so we made like visualizations of how the light angles would pass. Um,
Oh,
that
dude.
is a uh, what's the word? Consistency between takes. Chronologically, do you know what I'm
Yep.
talking? Continuity.
Yeah, yeah,
That's a
yep.
continuity nightmare. Having a sunlight that kind of like moves through a window every
Yeah,
like 30
true.
seconds.
Yeah, yeah.
That was wild.
Oh, dude. Fun project. I mean, great movie. I highly recommend it. Prospect. Everyone go watch it. Um, yeah, I think that's a good place to end it. And I know you said you didn't want to promote your Patreon, but I think it's great. Promote your Patreon and your
Oh,
channel.
I'll promote it. Yeah, all of the stuff about trying to just use open source software and just kind of cheap techniques and photo scanning and mixing and matching live action and doing all of that. I'm very into it, and I'm trying to throw as much information and kind of examples and assets and stuff over there on the Patreon as I can. If $3 a month, if you want to come
$3.
along with that,
What a steal. That's
it
awesome,
could
man.
be to somebody.
Yeah. And your channel, Ian Hubert. That's your channel name?
Yes.
Got it. Yeah.
hmm If you
Awesome.
type Ian Hubert YouTube into Google, it'll get you
It'll get it.
to me. There
Awesome.
was a swimmer guy named Ian Hubert, but I won.
Nice. And we're gonna see Dynamo uploaded by mid-May.
April. No, May 15th at the
15th.
latest, maybe.
Awesome. So 16th, we'll all come knocking. No. Thanks, Ian. It was great to talk with you. And
Good talking with you too,
yeah,
man.
I'll talk to you soon. Bye.